His job was simple: keep her alive, stay invisible, feel nothing. He failed at one of those. Welcome, besties. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. Zara Akhafer had been receiving death threats for 6 months before her father finally decided she needed someone to keep her alive. She didn't want a bodyguard. She said so, loudly, repeatedly, in 2 languages on 2 separate occasions, with enough conviction that her assistant physically left the room to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Her father didn't care. He sat behind his desk in the corner office of Akhafer Holdings' Seoul headquarters, looked at his daughter the way he had been looking at her since she was 9 years old, and told him she didn't need anyone to walk her to school, and said 4 words. This isn't a discussion. Zara opened her mouth. 4 words, he repeated, holding up his hand. Not a discussion. She closed her mouth, looked out the window at the Seoul skyline stretching 32 floors below them, breathed through her nose. Fine, she said, but I want it on record that I think this is completely unnecessary. Noted, her father said, already reaching for his phone. She walked out. She didn't slam the door because she was a professional, and professionals did not slam doors, but she closed it with enough intention that everyone in the outer office looked up from their screens and then immediately back down again. So on a Tuesday morning, in the lobby of Akhafer Holdings, Zara came downstairs at 7:53 and met the man her father had chosen to be her permanent shadow. He was standing near the elevator bank when she stepped out, not sitting, not leaning, standing completely still, hands clasped in front of him, dark suit with no tie, eyes moving steadily across the lobby in a pattern she recognized even before she understood it. He was mapping the room. Every entry point, every person, every bag. He had probably been doing it since he arrived, and he would do it until he left, and every single room in between. He was tall, lean but built in the way that suggested function over vanity. Sharp jaw, short, neat dark hair, a face that gave away absolutely nothing. When he saw her walking toward him, he didn't smile, didn't bow, didn't say good morning. He just adjusted his gaze to her and held it, calm and assessing, like she was one more variable he was adding to his calculations. She found it immediately irritating. You must be the babysitter, she said, stopping in front of him. Park Siwon. His voice was even, low, unhurried. I prefer protection specialist. I prefer to not need protecting. Looks like neither of us gets what we want today. He held her gaze for a beat. Good morning, Ms. Akhafer. Don't do that. Do what? Be professionally pleasant. It's unsettling. He said nothing. She stared at him for a moment longer than was comfortable, decided she had made her point, and walked toward the exit. He fell into step exactly 1 pace behind her, and to the right without making a sound. She hated him immediately, completely, and with impressive efficiency. Park Siwon had been doing this work for 11 years. Before the private sector, 4 years with the National Protection Service, guarding diplomatic officials and government ministers. Before that, 8 years in military intelligence running operations he was still not at liberty to discuss in any context, with any person ever. He had protected a sitting prime minister, 2 technology billionaires, one of whom cried every morning for reasons that were never explained and never questioned. A pharmaceutical heiress who changed her daily schedule on pure whim and seemed to enjoy watching her security team adapt in real time. A K-pop entertainment executive who, during one particularly difficult contract period, threw a glass paperweight at a wall during a phone call and then apologized to the wall. He had seen difficult. He had a calibrated, extensively field-tested understanding of difficult. Zara Akhafer recalibrated everything within 72 hours. She was not difficult in the conventional ways. She was not reckless for the sake of thrill-seeking. She was not demanding or performatively important. She did not treat him like furniture or a servant or a weapon to be deployed. She was something harder to manage than any of that. She was completely, deliberately, and apparently effortlessly unpredictable, not out of carelessness, but out of a mind that moved faster than her schedule and saw no particular reason to slow down for administrative convenience. Day 1. 7:45 in the morning, a full 40 minutes before her first logged meeting, she changed her route without notification. He discovered this when he turned from his position at the building entrance to find her already gone, located her via the tracker her father had insisted on, and she didn't know about, and found her 3 blocks north on a Gangnam side street with her earphones in, walking at a pace that suggested she had somewhere to be and no interest in discussing it. He appeared at her right side without a word. She pulled one earphone out and looked at him sideways. "Were you following me?" "Yes." "That's strange behavior." "So is walking alone, when someone has threatened to kill you 4 times in writing." She considered this, put the earphone back in. They walked the remaining 2 blocks in silence, and she was at her meeting with 3 minutes to spare. Day 3. She took a meeting entirely off the digital calendar. No location logged, no advance notice to his team, no message. He ran the trace, found the address, a community kitchen in Mapo, and arrived to find her inside teaching a cooking class to a group of teenage girls, laughing so freely it was briefly disorienting. He stood outside the door for 2 hours and 14 minutes. He ran threat assessments, checked the perimeter 4 times, mentally reviewed every person who had entered the building in the last hour. When she came out, there was tomato sauce on her white blouse sleeve. She was still glowing from whatever had happened inside, warm and loose in a way she never was at the office, like she had been able to set something heavy down for a couple of hours and hadn't fully picked it back up yet. "You could have told me," he said, falling into step beside her. "You would have sent a team to sweep the building and terrified everyone inside." "That's correct. That's what advance notice is for." "Those girls don't need to be frightened. They needed to learn how to make jollof rice." She looked at the sauce on her sleeve without particular concern. It was worth it. He did not respond. But that evening, he quietly added the Mapo community kitchen to his weekly advance check rotation. Every Thursday before she arrived, the building was quietly assessed, the perimeter noted, the exits mapped. She never knew. He told himself this was standard protocol applied to a recurring location. He didn't examine the part of it that wasn't. If you are enjoying this story so far, besties, do me a favor, hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed, because we are just getting started and it is about to get so much more complicated. By the end of week 3, C1 had built a complete operational profile of Zara Akefer. This was normal, expected, part of the job. Understanding how a principal moved, thought, and behaved under varying conditions was fundamental to keeping them safe. He had done it with every client. He had never done it the way he did it with her. He knew she took her coffee black, but always ordered it with sugar on reflex, and then left the sugar packets unopened on the side. He knew she chewed the end of her pen when she was working through a problem she hadn't solved yet, and that she did it without realizing. He knew she was fearless in boardrooms, genuinely, structurally fearless, the kind that wasn't performed, and quietly, almost invisibly nervous at social events with no agenda. He knew she kept novels in her work bag, tucked under folders like she was hiding them, and that she read during her lunch break if no meeting ran over, which they almost always did. And when they did, she looked briefly disappointed in a way she immediately suppressed. He knew the exact difference between the laugh she used in meetings when something wasn't actually funny and the one that happened when something caught her completely off guard. They were nothing alike. Most people would never notice. He noticed every time. He told himself this was pattern recognition. He told himself it was threat assessment data. He told himself a lot of things in those early weeks, and he was a disciplined man, so he almost believed them. The first real crack appeared at the Lot Hotel Gala in week 7. Zara was being honored at an industry dinner, 1,200 guests, 3 floors. C1 had spent 2 days on advance work, floor plans, catering staff lists, vetting, entry and exit mapping, placement of his 2-person support team. By the time they arrived, he could have walked the building blind. He was stationed near the main entrance when her name was called, and she walked to the podium. He watched her from across the ballroom. The emerald dress, the hair pinned up, the composed, commanding posture. She looked like a woman who had been standing at podiums her entire life and found the experience mildly relaxing. Then he looked at her hands. She was gripping the edges of the podium. Not dramatically, not obviously, just the slight white knuckle press of someone holding something because they need the anchor. She was terrified. The woman who walked into every boardroom like the air itself had been expecting her, who pushed back on him in the lobby at 7:53 on day one without blinking, who laughed in a room full of teenage strangers like she had known them for years. She was standing at that podium absolutely terrified, and she was giving the speech perfectly, and not one person in that 1,200-person room would have seen it. He saw it. She finished to applause, came down from the podium with the same composed expression, spent 40 minutes working the room with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. And then she found a quiet corner near the far bar and stood with her back to the crowd, glass in one hand, shoulders dropping half an inch, exhaling slowly in the private way of someone who has been holding themselves together for a long time and has finally, briefly, found a wall to lean against that no one is watching. Siwon crossed the room. He didn't announce himself. He simply appeared at her side and stood facing the same direction she was, looking out at the crowd, and said quietly, "You had the room," from the first sentence. She turned, looked at him with an expression that was more open than anything she'd shown him in 7 weeks. Was it that visible? Only to me. Something moved across her face. Small, quickly managed. You're surprisingly observant for someone who isn't supposed to be paying attention to me. Paying attention to you is the entire job. You know what I mean. He did. He let the silence hold for a moment. You gripped the podium. No one else would have caught it. She looked back at the room, was quiet for a beat. My mother was a speaker, the kind who could hold absolute silence in a room of 500 people and make every single person feel personally addressed. She paused. She died when I was 14. I've been afraid of podiums ever since. I don't know why I just told you that. Siwon said nothing. There were no correct words, and he had learned, some years ago, that silence was frequently the more honest response. But he stayed beside her for the rest of the evening. Not because his threat assessment required it. He stayed because it was the only thing he wanted to do, and he was still, at this point, telling himself that didn't mean anything. The threats escalated in month 3. Someone had obtained her private mobile number, a number held by fewer than 12 people, all of them known, all of them vetted. Messages arrived at irregular hours. Oblique, careful, written by someone who understood exactly how close to a legal line they could walk. Then a note appeared on her car windscreen inside the company garage. Secured entry, keycard access, camera coverage on all 4 entry points. Someone with internal access. Siwon restructured everything within 24 hours. Daily route variation, no patterns longer than 3 days. His post moved from the outer lobby to directly outside her office floor. He reduced his sleep to 4 hours and spent the remainder running background reviews on every employee with garage access. 143 people, worked through methodically, name by name. Zara noticed the change. On the 4th morning of the new protocol, she arrived at her floor to find him at his new post outside her office and came back 5 minutes later with 2 coffees. She set one on the small table beside his station and leaned against the wall next to him. He looked at the cup. I don't take anything on duty. It's not anything, it's coffee. She held her own cup with both hands and looked at the wall across from them. Talk to me, how bad is it? It's under control. Siwon. His name in her voice. Direct. Not a title, not a formality. Just his name, the way someone says a name when they need the person behind it to actually be present. He looked at her. Whoever is sending these has internal access. We're working through the list. Her face remained composed, but he watched her swallow once slowly. So it's someone in this building. Possibly, likely. She nodded, small, deliberate processing. I've worked with some of these people for 8 years. People surprise you. Not usually. She was quiet for a moment, then she glanced at him sideways. You haven't. He held her gaze. 1 second, 2. He looked back at the corridor. Drink the coffee, she said. I won't file a report. He drank the coffee. It was good. He didn't say so, but he thought about it for the rest of the morning in the small, involuntary way that things stay with you when you're trying very hard not to let them. Now, besties, I need you to stay with me here, because this is where everything changes, and I mean everything. The night in Insadong happened on a Wednesday. Zara had flagged a dinner as personal and asked him to wait outside the restaurant. Small traditional place in Insadong, the kind with low lantern lighting and lacquered wooden tables, and a menu that hadn't changed in 15 years. She had been vague about who she was meeting, which she had a right to be, and which he had noted and filed under things that require closer attention. He waited outside for 19 minutes. At minute 19, something shifted in his assessment. He couldn't name it precisely. This happened sometimes, after enough years. The threat calculation ran faster than conscious thought and produced an output before he could articulate the input. He went inside. He found her at a corner table. The man across from her was well-dressed, mid-40s, smiling with the particular quality of someone who has decided what the end of this evening looks like. His posture was angled toward the exit. His eyes moved to the door every 45 seconds, and at his left side, beneath his jacket, there was a shape that C1 had been trained to identify at 30 meters in poor lighting. He crossed the restaurant in 8 steps. He appeared at the table, placed his hand on Zara's shoulder, firm, signal clear, and said, "We need to leave. Now." She looked up, looked at his face for less than 1 second. She stood up without a single question asked. The man across the table reached toward his jacket. He did not complete the movement. What followed took 11 seconds and is not worth detailing except to say that at the end of those 11 seconds, the man was restrained on the floor of the restaurant. Zara was outside on the cobblestones. C1 had 2 colleagues en route and local police on the line, and the restaurant staff were standing very still with the particular expression of people who have witnessed something they will be describing to others for years. Outside, Zara stood against the stone wall of the building with her arms crossed and her breathing steady. Rain had started, light, barely more than mist, and the lantern light from the restaurant doorway threw warm orange across the wet cobblestones. He ended the call and turned to her. "Are you hurt?" "No," clear, immediate. "Who was he?" "We'll have a name within the hour." She nodded, processed this. The rain caught the light around her and she looked entirely present, entirely calm, and he understood in that moment that her composure was not the absence of feeling. It was something she had built deliberately, stone by stone, over a long time, and it held even now. Then she reached out and put her hand on his forearm. She wasn't thinking about it. He could see that. It was the instinctive reach of someone whose body moved toward safety before the mind caught up with it. She held it for 3 seconds, looked up at him. "Thank you," she said, and it was not the thank you of an employer to a contractor. It was the kind that comes from somewhere underneath language. She let go. He looked at the place on his forearm where her hand had been. He thought, this is a problem. He thought, this has been a problem for a while. He thought, I should have dealt with this earlier. He said none of it, because he was a professional, and professionals managed their internal states and did not inflict them on their principals, and he kept all of it very still inside him for the rest of that night, and the night after, and several nights after that. They identified the man within the hour, as promised. He led them to the source of the campaign within the week, a former business partner of Zara's father, a man with a long grievance and a longer memory, who had decided that the most effective pressure point was the daughter. By the end of month 4, there was an arrest, a court date, and a threat level that had dropped from active to resolved. On the evening the resolution was confirmed, C1 found Zara in her office at 11:15. The floor was empty. The city was spread out below the windows like a field of scattered light. She was sitting on the edge of her desk, not in her chair, on the desk itself, which she would never have done if anyone else was present, staring at nothing with the look of someone finally letting down a weight they'd been carrying so long they'd stopped noticing it was there. He knocked on the open door. "You should go home," he said. "So should you. I'm on duty." "The threat is resolved. C1, go home." She looked at him. "Actually, sit down." He looked at the chair across from her. "Sit down," she said again, not unkindly. "You've been standing outside doors for 4 months. You're allowed to use a chair." He sat. It was strange in a way he hadn't expected. He was almost never sitting in her presence. Always posted, always standing, always maintaining the physical posture of function. Sitting felt like something else, like the difference between being in a room and being in it. She studied him for a moment. Then she said, "Why this work? And I mean that genuinely. You could be running intelligence operations. You could be heading a division. Why protection detail?" He was quiet for long enough that she might have thought he wasn't going to answer. "I ran a unit," he said finally. "Military, 8 men." He looked at his hands, loosely clasped between his knees. "One operation went the wrong way. I got 6 of them home." The unfinished arithmetic sat in the air between them. She didn't fill it with words. She waited, the way she always waited, completely, without urgency. "After that," he said, "I didn't want operations anymore. Strategy, objectives, acceptable losses." He paused. "I wanted to do one thing completely. Keep one person safe every single day. No mission parameters, no acceptable losses, just one person." Zara looked at him for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than usual. "That is the saddest and most honest thing I have ever heard someone say about their own life. It's just a reason." "No," she said. "It's not just a reason. It's you deciding what you were willing to live with." She held his gaze. "That's not nothing, that's everything." He looked at her. He had been very careful, for 4 months, about how he looked at her. Durations. Frequencies. He had managed it the way he managed all variables that had the potential to compromise operational clarity. He looked at her now and stopped managing it. She looked back. Neither of them said anything. The city glittered 32 floors below them, indifferent and enormous, and the silence between them was the kind that has weight and warmth and nothing uncomfortable in it at all. He stood up. "Good night, Ms. Akafer," he said. "Zara," she said quietly. "You can call me Zara." He paused at the door, did not turn around. "Good night, Zara," he said. And he left before he could do anything he would need to professionally account for in the morning. He put the resignation letter on her desk at 7:48 the next morning. She arrived at 7:53, coat half removed, and stopped when she saw the white envelope. She stared at it, set her coat down slowly, did not touch the envelope. "What is this?" she said. The appropriate response to an inappropriate situation. She looked up at him, meaning what exactly? He had rehearsed this. He was good at preparation. A protection specialist who cannot maintain clear operational boundaries is a liability. The threat has been resolved. This is the natural transition point. I'll ensure your new detail is fully briefed before I hand over. She stared at him. "You're running," she said. "I'm being professional." "You're running, and you're using professional language to do it." She moved around the desk. He held his position. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he had to make a conscious choice to maintain eye contact and not look away, and she looked up at him with an expression that was entirely without pretense. "I am going to ask you one direct question, and I need you to answer it without the professional language." He waited. "Last night in this office, what was that?" Silence. "C1. It was." "Don't." He stopped. She held his gaze. "I'm not asking about the job, I'm asking about you. What was that?" He breathed in slowly. Out. He had spent 11 years learning to be very still inside difficult situations. He was finding, at this particular moment, that the skill had limits. "I stopped being objective somewhere around week 3, he said. "I've been managing it. I thought I was managing it." And last night, a beat. Last night I stopped managing it. She nodded slowly, like he had confirmed something she had already known and was relieved to hear out loud. I want to tell you something, she said. The night in Sadong, when that man reached for his jacket and you appeared at the table, I want to tell you what I thought in that exact second. He waited. I thought there he is, she said it simply, without drama. Not I'm safe, not thank God, just there he is, like that was the only thing that mattered, like you were the thing I was most relieved to see. She paused. I don't think about my employees that way, Siwon, I know the difference. He was very still. I'm not asking you to compromise anything, she continued. I understand the ethics of the position. I understand why you wrote that letter. But I need you to be honest with me, out loud, before you make a decision, because I think you've been honest with everyone except yourself for a very long time. The morning light came through the windows and lay across the space between them in long, pale lines. I failed at the invisible part, he said finally. His voice was lower than usual. The feeling nothing, I managed that for about 6 weeks. She exhaled, long and slow, the sound of someone setting something down that had been held too long. So did I, she said, for approximately the same amount of time. He reached up. His hand moved slowly, without urgency, giving her every opportunity to step back if she wanted to. He tucked a loose braid behind her ear. She went very still, her eyes closed for just 1 second. When she opened them, she said, accept the resignation. He looked at her. Accept it, she said. Figure out who you want to be in this situation. Then, if you want, come find me. A small pause. I'll be the one running a company on the 32nd floor. Something shifted in his face. The almost smile. The one she had been cataloging for 4 months because it was rare and when it came, was entirely unguarded. You planned this, he said. I'm a CEO. I plan everything. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the envelope from her desk. And he left. The resignation was formal, complete, and processed within 48 hours. The new protections specialist, excellent credentials, thorough, professional, was briefed personally by C1 over 3 days. Every protocol, every route, every risk flag, every location on the advanced check rotation, including a community kitchen in Mapo that ran every Thursday. He was thorough. He was precise. He made sure the person standing between Zara and the world was the best available, because she was worth that regardless of anything else, and some things don't change based on circumstance. On the Friday evening after the handover was complete, they had dinner. Small restaurant in Yongsan. No reservation. The kind of place where the menu is handwritten and the tables are close together and the lighting is candlelight and ambient warmth and nothing clinical at all. She was there when he arrived, already seated, already menu in hand, and she looked up when he came in with the expression of someone who had been trying not to look at the door and failing. He sat down across from her. No briefing, no threat assessment, no scan of the exits except for one automatic sweep that he caught himself doing and almost stopped, but not quite, because 11 years does not disappear in 48 hours. She watched him do it and smiled. You just checked the exits. Habit. You can take the man out of the detail. Apparently not entirely. She laughed. The real one. The one he had been cataloging since week 2. It landed somewhere in his chest and stayed there with the comfortable permanence of something that has found where it belongs. They ordered. She gestured too widely while telling a story about a supplier meeting that had gone completely sideways that afternoon and knocked her water glass with her elbow. He caught it without looking. She stared at his hand on the glass for a second, then burst out laughing. You're going to be doing that forever, aren't you? She said. Probably. Catching things. It's what I do. She smiled at him, not the boardroom smile, not the gala smile. The real one unguarded, warm, reaching all the way to her eyes. Yes, she said softly, it is. She had tomato sauce on her sleeve by the time the main course arrived. She noticed it, looked at it with the same philosophical calm with which she had regarded the blouse in Mappo 4 months ago, and shrugged. He handed her his napkin without being asked. She took it, looked at him across the candlelight. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You'll ask either way." "True." She set the napkin down. "What do you do now? I mean, what comes next for you?" He thought about it, genuinely, unhurriedly. The question of what came next had always had a clear operational answer: next client, next contract, next assessment. He had not, until very recently, considered it as a question about himself. "I don't know," he said. It was perhaps the most honest thing he had said to anyone in years. "I've been someone's last line of defense for 11 years. I don't have a lot of practice at being something else." She tilted her head. "What would you want to be, if you could choose without the job in the way?" He looked at her across the small table, the candle between them, the city quiet outside the window, the restaurant warm and easy around them. "Present," he said. "I'd want to be present somewhere with someone without always being on the outside of it." She held his gaze. Her expression was soft and clear, and without any of the layers she kept professionally maintained. "You're not on the outside of anything right now," she said. He looked at her. She was right. For the first time in 11 years, he was sitting at the table. Not outside the door, not scanning the perimeter, not positioned between someone and the world. He was just here, in a restaurant in Yongsan, on a Friday evening, across from a woman who had dismantled every defense system he possessed over the course of 4 months, and done it so naturally that he hadn't noticed until it was already done. He reached across the table, set his hand over hers. She turned her hand over and held it. No ceremony, no announcement, like it was the most ordinary thing and also the only thing. "I'm not easy to be around," he said quietly. "I run threat assessments in restaurants. I catalog exits. I have years of things I can't talk about, and I'm not entirely sure how to exist outside of function." "I know," she said. "I'll probably always be watching the room." "I know that too." "I'm not," he paused. "I don't know how to do this." "Stay," she said. "That's the only thing you need to know how to do. Just stay." He looked at their hands on the table. "I spent 11 years making sure the people I protected were safe enough to have a life," he said slowly. "I never thought about whether I was allowed to have one too." She squeezed his hand once, firm and certain. "You are," she said. "You have been the whole time. You just needed someone to tell you." He nodded slowly. Outside the window, Seoul moved through its Friday evening, enormous and luminous and entirely unaware of the small table near the window, where a woman with tomato sauce on her sleeve was holding the hand of a man who had spent 11 years standing outside things, and had finally, quietly, come inside. 6 months later, someone at an industry reception asked Zara how she had met her partner. She smiled into her champagne glass with the private quality of someone revisiting something they like to revisit. "He was hired to protect me," she said. "How did it start?" "He stayed when he didn't have to," she paused, "and I made sure he knew he was allowed to." Across the reception hall, Siwon was standing near the entrance. Old habit, he was not working. He had not been working for 6 months. He was here as her guest, in a dark suit with no earpiece, no tactical consideration, no operational posture. Just present. And yet, exits 3. Entry points 2. Crowd density at the West Bar manageable. Some things do not disappear entirely. He had made peace with that. Zara caught his eye from across the room. She raised her glass a fraction, small, private, just for him. He dipped his chin. Their language, built without planning, the way all real languages are built, out of repetition and specificity and shared history. She turned back to her conversation. He stayed near the entrance, watching the room, not with the hypervigilance of function, but with the quieter attention of someone who is simply paying attention to the things that matter. The way the light catches her when she laughs. The moment she glances toward him across a crowded room, as though checking that he's still there, still present, still real. He was always there. He had finally stopped being surprised by how much he wanted to be. There was a time when Park Si-won had believed that keeping people safe required staying outside of things, standing at the perimeter, watching from the correct distance. The job was the wall between himself and everything behind it. He understood now that he'd been wrong. The bravest thing he had ever done, more than the operations he couldn't name, more than the years of solitude that had felt like discipline but had mostly just been distance. The bravest thing he had ever done was sit down at a table in Yongsan and let someone hand him a cup of coffee and let it mean something. The second bravest was staying. He intended to keep doing it. Everyone expected Park Si-won to finish his contract, file his report, and disappear into the next assignment. He was too professional to stay. He was too controlled to fall. He was too disciplined to let one woman with tomato sauce on her sleeve and a laugh he had been cataloging since week 2 completely reroute the direction of his life. Everyone was wrong about all of it. He chose her. Not the job. Not the contract. Not the clean and manageable life of someone who protects things from a distance and never risks being part of them. He chose to stay. And the man who had spent 11 years making sure everyone else was safe enough to live their life finally, at 34 years old, on a Friday evening in a restaurant in Yongsan, decided to live his. Some people come into your life as a threat assessment. Some come as a variable to manage. And some, the rare ones, the ones that change everything, come in and quietly, without asking permission, become the reason you stop counting exits and start paying attention to what's inside the room. He was paid to protect her. He stayed because she was worth more than the payment. No one expected that. Least of all him. If this story moved you, besties, you know what to do, like subscribe and drop a comment telling me who you were rooting for from the very beginning. See you in the next one.